Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. You know, the weird kid in the corner. These are such a weird pair of games. On the one hand, they marked several big milestones in the Smash Bros. Series, but they're also some of the most forgettable games in the series. In nearly every category, they're outclassed by some other Smash game, so they're just left looking kinda awkward. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they are awful, horrible games that should be thrown in a landfill for all time, but it's a short list, and there does technically have to be a worst Smash game. The development of the next Smash game after Brawl was pretty unremarkable. The previous games all had a distinct goal going into their development. Smash 64 was designed to be an easy-to-play fighting game for beginners to enjoy. Melee took the foundation of 64, cranked everything to 11, and took advantage of much stronger hardware. And Brawl's primary goals were an enjoyable single-player campaign and online multiplayer. But after that, the proposition for a new Smash felt pretty routine. This is our brand new console, the Nintendo Wii U. So, where's Smash? While there wasn't exactly a defined objective for the next entry immediately, one did eventually emerge, putting it on 2 consoles. Fans dreamed of having a handheld Smash title. Even in the lead up to Brawl's release, Sakurai was being asked about putting Smash Bros. On the Nintendo DS. Sony even beat them to the punch by putting their Smash clone, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, onto the PlayStation Vita. Looking at the Nintendo 3DS though, Sakurai decided that it was finally time. Now the 3DS isn't exactly known for its power, but the little handheld could do some pretty impressive stuff. And Sakurai was well aware of its capabilities, having just finished up work on Kid Icarus Uprising. There was a fear that the hardware limitations would disappoint fans if there was only a 3DS Smash. Compromises would need to be made for the game to work on the handheld, and the other option was to just make Smash for the new Wii U console, which didn't really offer anything new aside from raw power being Nintendo's first HD console. So Sakurai decided to just split the difference and make a version for each. This time around, Bandai Namco was tapped to be the primary developer alongside Sakurai and Sora Limited, which is a pretty big get. Their experience developing fighting games like Tekken, and just having their resources in general would prove to be great for the game's development. Moving forward, each version of the game was developed with different intentions. With the 3DS being objectively the more casual version, this game focused on short burst single-player content that you could pick up and play for a bit and then put down. Bye-bye. Meanwhile, the Wii U focused on more traditional Smash gameplay, with multiplayer being the primary focus, alongside more extensive single-player modes. And perhaps the biggest addition to the console version of the game was 8-player Smash. Evidently, this was conceptualized as far back as Melee, but the hardware would have... The content of each version was also more curated. The 3DS version stages and trophies had a bigger emphasis on handheld games, while the Wii U version represented console games. There are some obvious exceptions, particularly with returning content, but overall, the games were organized with that in mind. Despite all of these differences though, Sakurai made sure that one aspect was the same across both versions, apart from the gameplay itself, and that was the roster. And this makes sense. The cast of fighters is the most important thing to the fans, and having a character appear on one version but not the other would be incredibly disappointing. But because the rosters needed to be identical on both versions, and the 3DS console was lacking in power, some of the characters needed to be severely altered to make them function well. Zelda and Sheik, for instance, had previously been a transforming character, but had to be split into 2 separate characters. Samus could turn into Zero Suit Samus and back using her final smash, and again they were turned into completely separate characters. And Ice Climbers, a 2-in-1 fighter, were completely cut from the roster. Now all of these examples worked perfectly fine on the Wii U. I mean, they worked on previous consoles with shittier hardware, so of course they were fine on Wii U. But this just shows how shitty the 3DS actually was in the power department. Even though the game was hinted at by Satoru Iwata in 2011 and the official developers were announced in 2012, it wouldn't be until E3 2013 that we would finally see an announcement. And I gotta say that this reveal is just so cool. Seeing Villager receive the invitation before running off, then we get a cool sizzle reel of all of Nintendo's big franchises before Mario appears, and everyone blasts into a 3DS. Now at the time, I wanna say this was a huge surprise. We obviously knew about the teased Wii U Smash title, and at this point we'd been getting one Smash Bros per home console, so this felt inevitable. But the idea of a 3DS version seemed almost ridiculous. We get to see some cool 3DS gameplay, and then Mario jumps up and transforms into beautiful HD graphics, showing off what the Wii U can do for Smash. And then, at long last, Villager comes to town. Villager is a pretty interesting choice for Smash. You wouldn't immediately think of Animal Crossing if you're thinking about a fighting game. It's a life simulation series where you collect little bugs and pay off crippling property debt, so including the Villager is a pretty unique choice. In fact, the character was considered as a fighter for Brawl, but was cut because he apparently wasn't suited for battle. Which is weird considering nothing about the character or his home franchise really changed. It just seems like Sakurai changed his mind. And then... now that's what I'm talking about. Villager is a cool addition, but anytime a Nintendo first party gets added, it's sort of like, that's about right. But third parties are where these shocking additions live, and I honestly can't think of a better third party reveal alongside the reveal of the game than Mega Man. And he's the classic Mega Man. They stayed right in that NES era and gave him all sorts of weapons from the classic series with a huge focus on Mega Man 2, widely considered the most popular classic Mega Man game. Later on in the day, the show floor featured an exclusive character reveal for some reason, Wii Fit Trainer. I remember everyone initially thinking that this was a crazy joke character, but when you actually take a look, it's actually really clever. The instructor from the Wii Fit games, with a moveset built around all sorts of workouts and yoga poses, is just so creative. People even question Wii Fit Trainer's place in the roster, like, is this really a gaming all-star? But both versions of Wii Fit were in the top 10 best-selling games for the Wii. So I'd definitely say that they earned their spot in Nintendo's history, despite not really being a very traditional video game. The reveals for these new Smash games were pretty monumental in Smash's history. This is the first time we have high-quality trailers specifically for new character reveals. Brawl got a decently animated trailer for its initial reveal, but after that, the occasional character trailers were really just gameplay montages all constructed using the game engine. Moving forward, nearly every character would be getting these high-effort reveal trailers. I'm so excited to see what the single-player cutscenes for the game are gonna look like. Sakurai has gone on record really beefing with the idea of cutscenes in games, or rather, those cutscenes being posted online. For Brawl's Subspace Emissary, he felt that they were a reward for playing through the campaign, and that reward lost its magic when the cutscenes were just uploaded to YouTube. So this time around, no cutscenes and no single-player adventure. But the resources that would have gone towards single-player cutscenes instead went to these grandiose reveal trailers. So while I heavily disagree with his reasoning, I'm totally okay with how things panned out. The reveals just became these giant events that the internet collectively participated in. They were truly something special. At this point, Sakurai would begin posting on a special Miiverse community with a new screenshot every weekday. Sometimes these would just be fun images to look at, but occasionally they would give us a look at stages, items, costumes, and even reveal returning veteran fighters. During a Nintendo Direct held in December 2013, a new fighter was revealed, Rosalina and Luma. Debuting in Super Mario Galaxy, Rosalina was met with crazy popularity, so it felt very obvious to include her in the game. To this day, many wonder how Rosalina and Luma could function on the 3DS, but the Ice Climbers couldn't. But the reasoning is actually pretty simple. With the Ice Climbers, the second climber is essentially a CPU fighter who will work in tandem with you, but also occasionally act on its own, and being a CPU fighter requires additional calculations for the game to do. For Luma, there is no CPU factor. Luma is simply an extension of Rosalina, acting only based on player input. Rosalina and Luma do fill the 2-in-1 fighter role in place of the Ice Climbers, so I think it worked out okay based on the position that Sakurai was in. In February 2014, another Direct was held that revealed Little Mac, the first character to ever be promoted from Assist Trophy to full-on fighter. The recent reboot of the Punch-Out series brought Little Mac back to the forefront of Nintendo games, so now was the perfect time to develop a whole moveset. He also got a significantly fresher cut. I mean, just look at how dirty they did my boy back in Brawl. All this information was pretty much drip-fed to fans over nearly a year, but all that would change in April. A 40-minute dedicated Smash Bros. Direct that gave us a ton of information about the games. Technical specs, particularly about the 3DS version, showing off new items, assists, Pokémon, and stages. There were also hints about the two versions connecting with each other, though they left that information fairly vague. They also specifically discussed changes to the returning characters and showcased the new fighters in depth. And this Direct ended off with a brand new reveal, Charizard. Another victim of the 3DS hardware limitations, Pokémon Trainer was no longer in the roster, and Charizard went rogue, becoming a solo fighter in Smash 4. While I definitely missed Pokémon Trainer, I think Charizard being his own character made for a pretty good compromise. but they wouldn't put a whole trailer together just for a returning fighter. Well ahead of Pokémon X and Y's release, Sakurai already earmarked a slot for a new Pokémon from the next generation, and he ultimately selected Greninja after meeting with the developers and taking an early look at Pokemon's next games. In fact, Greninja's Smash Bros. Inclusion and moveset were based solely on concept art and a basic rundown of the character. So it's actually pretty lucky that they went with a Pokemon that ended up being the most popular in the world. While this direct was big, they pulled out their big guns later that summer during E3 2014. Starting out, they revealed the Mii Fighters with such a fun video of Iwata and Reggie fist fighting each other. While this era was kind of disappointing for Nintendo, these elements of their digital events really felt magical, and I kinda hope they bring back this charm more in the future. Sakurai mentions that Miis were actually considered as fighters in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but at the time it didn't feel right for them to be punching and kicking. I've always found this weird. Miis were on so many different Wii titles doing so many different actions that it actually felt like they were very obviously missing from Smash. I mean, they literally box in the game that comes with your Wii. What more evidence do you need that they can fight? Luckily though, this tune changed because now we have 3 flavors of Mii: Brawler, Sword Fighter, and Gunner. You can use any Mii created in the Mii Maker as the basis for each fighter, and they're even further personalized within Smash. Not only can you change their cosmetics, but their height and weight, equipment, and even their special moves are all fully customizable. Oh, this is just so good, sweetie. We're gonna put this right up here on the fridge. This wasn't the only reveal during this segment. Iwata pulls out of his pocket a little Mario figurine, scans it into the game, and it proceeds to beat the shit out of Reggie. This is the grand reveal of Amiibo, Nintendo's foray into the Toys to Life market that promised a variety of features across many of Nintendo's games, debuting with Super Smash Bros. With Amiibo, you can scan in a character and customize it. These can then be scanned in as a fighter to play during a Smash match. The Amiibo will start out at level 1 and will actually level up and learn from the fighting strategies of their opponents. And functionality aside, Amiibo at the very least are some cool figurines to collect. You can buy your favorites, train up your mains, or buy literally every single one. But no one would be financially irresponsible enough to do that, now would they? At the back end of the digital event, we got another Smash Bros. Reveal, Palutena from Kid Icarus. Pit's modern redesign in Super Smash Bros. Brawl resulted in inspiration for a whole soft reboot led by Sakurai himself, Kid Icarus Uprising. Uprising made Palutena into much more of an active character, and as a result, she had far more to pull from for her Smash Bros. Incarnation. And I just gotta say, her reveal trailer is badass, with this anime-style battle between Link and Pit before Palutena interferes. The trailer also ends off with Dark Pit, a new character created just for Uprising, and at the time, we weren't really sure if this was just a cameo. But this was technically Dark Pit's reveal as a fighter too. They just wanted to keep us guessing, I guess. Later on in the day, Nintendo held a developer roundtable in which Sakurai would dive a little deeper into these new Smash titles. But they also did the unthinkable, a secret reveal. I have no idea why they would save the Pac-Man reveal for the little panel that was technically behind closed doors. This would have been huge to see live as part of their digital event. I mean, it wasn't as high effort as the other 2 trailers, but saving it for the event and just throwing the reveal on YouTube a while later was just a really strange decision. But regardless, Pac-Man joins the fight. Now this was kind of expected, with Bandai Namco developing the game and owning Pac-Man, but it's still such a treat to see. And using the classic Pac-Man design rather than some of the more modern stuff just feels right. This is the Pac-Man that everyone thinks of, and that's definitely the guy that should be in Smash. Sakurai also gave a breakdown of custom moves. We got a bit of a peek at customs during both the Mii Fighter and Palutena reveals, but it wasn't fully clear what was going on and the extent to it all. However, in this we finally learned that every character will have custom moves. Rather than just the standard 4 special moves, each character has an additional 2 variations of these moves for a grand total of 12 each. But once we got the game, these custom moves turned out to be a little underwhelming. So many of them boiled down to very basic archetypes. Projectiles that are big and strong but very slow, or projectiles that are tiny and weak but very fast. Or they would just randomly plop an element onto a move, like wind or electricity or the ability to bury. No doubt some of these custom moves were neat. Characters like Palutena or Mega Man could get nearly an entirely different moveset using custom moves. And then there's Donkey Kong, who was just a total issue. And the worst part is that these aren't available from the start. You have to unlock nearly every custom move by playing through the game, which doesn't sound that bad until you realize that once you unlock a custom move, it doesn't get removed from the pool of possible rewards, so you can get duplicates of the exact same move, making it an unbelievable time sink to get all of these. I managed to finally get all of the custom moves on Smash for 3DS, and fortunately, anytime I wanted custom moves on my Wii U, I could just transfer a fighter over, which was a blessing because I'm not going through that hell twice. But even this wasn't all Nintendo had up their sleeves, because later on in the day they held the Super Smash Bros. Invitational, featuring professional Smash Bros. Players and commentators competing in this brand new game. This was huge. Nintendo was not only acknowledging, but full-on endorsing the competitive Smash scene, which was a total 180 from their behavior just a couple years prior. In July, a new reveal trailer dropped. Not only did this confirm the return of Captain Falcon, it also revealed the brand new fighters Lucina and Robin, both from Fire Emblem Awakening. It's since been revealed that Lucina was initially going to be an alternate costume for Marth, however, they wanted to give her different attributes, and so ultimately she became her own fighter. Robin is the player avatar in Awakening. While a totally customizable character, the appearance and name in Smash is the default. Awakening was a sort of final gambit for the Fire Emblem series, and it performed really well. So both of these characters being included, despite all the Fire Emblem complaining, is pretty justified in my opinion. But all these new fighters for the game have been pretty awesome, and their trailers have been so sick. I'm really excited to see what else Nintendo will reveal. The Smash community was sent into total chaos. Internet investigators immediately began scrutinizing these leaked images and videos. Many thought these were photoshops or pre-existing art that were simply well masked because of the poor image quality. This leak came to be known as the ESRB leak, because an ESRB tag was used throughout the footage. At the time, it was believed to come from an ESRB employee. However, in 2023, a video released by Liam Robertson and Did You Know Gaming revealed it was actually the child of a Nintendo employee that shared the images with friends, which then got posted online. Imagine getting your parent fired because you wanted to show your friend the dog from Duck Hunt. And any remaining doubt about this leak was quashed with... Shulk's journey to Smash is kind of a cool story. Xenoblade Chronicles was released in Japan and eventually localized and released only in Europe. Many Nintendo fans were dying for this game to be released in North America, and eventually they started an online campaign called Operation Rainfall, letting Nintendo know they wanted 3 specific Wii games to be released in North America, with Xenoblade Chronicles among them. This would eventually happen, and it was perhaps this enthusiasm that showed there was a passion for this character. Of course, it's also possible he would have been in the game anyway, kinda like Lucas, but Operation Rainfall definitely let Nintendo know people cared about Xenoblade. After a little demo of the 3DS version, which I grinded the hell out of personally, the game officially released in September 2014 in Japan and October almost everywhere else. But the news wasn't done, because at the end of October we got the Smash for Wii U 50 Fact Extravaganza, a full half-hour presentation highlighting the Wii U version, how it differs from the 3DS version, and all sorts of little features. It was actually revealed that this version of the game has the most controller options in the franchise, including the GameCube controller thanks to an all-new GameCube controller adapter, and the 3DS by connecting it to the Wii U. And of course, there were some surprise announcements. Now, I get that they wanted to keep some reveals for that awkward period between the 3DS and Wii U releases just to hype up the second version, but it's just so funny for them to formally reveal Junior and the Koopalings after the game's already out. However, there was a genuine surprise at the end. This was massive. It's standard practice now, but Nintendo really seemed resistant to DLC. I mean, for starters, the Wii couldn't even do DLC in the first place, and even with the Wii U capable of doing it, it just kind of felt like they were reluctant to go for it. So to find out that Mewtwo was not only returning, but in the form of DLC, the floodgates were opened, and the character debates came back in full force. The final hilariously late reveal was Duck Hunt. It's such a shame that this one wasn't a surprise reveal, because I absolutely adore Duck Hunt as a fighter. Combining not just Duck Hunt, but some of Nintendo's other NES Zapper franchises into a single retro fighter is just sick. And then throw in that some of the attacks technically come from a magical god NES Zapper user outside of Smash, like this is peak Smash creativity. And with that, all there was left to do was wait for the Wii U version to come out, which it did in November 2014 in the West, followed by release in Japan in December. Let's take a look at the features that both games have, starting with Classic Mode. On Smash 3DS, Classic Mode features a path that your fighter travels along, and it forks, allowing you to have a choice in who you fight against. Each path also has a different color, signifying an easier or harder fight, and the rewards you get correspond to the difficulty. Outside of this pathing system, the actual fights are pretty similar to Classic Modes that you'd find in previous Smash titles. However, Smash for Wii U's Classic Mode is a doozy. So your fighter gets plopped onto this giant board, and you have a handful of scenarios to choose from for each fight. 1v1s, team battles, free-for-alls, CPUs with custom moves, there are lots of options. Then you rinse and repeat until you get to the end. And I don't know, man, I just feel like this is so lame. First off, it's obvious that they really want you to play the 8-player Smash battles, and these just kinda suck in Classic Mode. When you're playing with friends, the chaos is the entertainment, but when you're by yourself trying to get a decent score, it's just shit. Both versions of Classic Mode introduce cool new bosses though. On Smash for 3DS, if you have the difficulty high enough, Master Hand and Crazy Hand will turn into this crazy chaotic form, Master Core. This thing can turn itself into all kinds of configurations, like attacking with swords and turning into a beast. It's sick. The Wii U version also has all of these forms, however at some of the absolute highest difficulties is an additional form, Master Fortress, a sort of living labyrinth where you have to destroy several weak points to win. And honestly, this is actually really hard. This change to the final boss is genuinely the only saving grace to Wii U's Classic Mode, because I think this is just so neat. The stadium has some returning modes like Home Run Contest and Multi-Man Smash, but the Targets mode is way different. Target Blast, where you just play Angry Birds. Now, I don't fully hate this mode. It's at least sort of interesting and there is some strategy involved, but I am on my knees begging for the old Break the Targets modes with the unique maps. I miss them so much. And then there's Trophy Rush, a mode where you destroy falling blocks to build up a fever meter, and when that meter is maxed out, you get an onslaught of gold, trophies, and customs. This is one of the modes I use to grind out custom moves, and I kind of have a soft spot for it. I don't know why, it's just kind of fun. The trophies themselves are pretty cool too. They follow the same trend of the 3DS version focusing on handheld properties and the Wii U version focusing on console ones. They also feel way more elaborate and detailed this time around. I don't know, these sort of set pieces, they're just really cool. Also, did anyone else forget about the photo studio? You can pose the trophies into little dioramas and take photos, and I think I literally had exactly 0 seconds of playtime in this mode. I didn't even know it was there. Both games have exclusive modes that were built for their specific platform, so let's start with Smash for 3DS and its mode, Smash Run. This mode is just awesome. Everyone picks their fighter and it gets dumped into a gigantic map. As you explore this map, you defeat enemies and find rewards that buff your various stats, but if you get KO'd, you take a hit on your stats. After 5 minutes of collecting these buffs, everyone participates in a final contest using what they earned. Sometimes these are just fights with a specific theme, like explosives or mushrooms, but then others can be a race, either determined by speed or by jumping power. It's a really fun twist on the Smash formula, and it really excels by letting you all run around a gigantic arena, each on your own individual screen thanks to the 3DS. It's also pretty interesting to see how elements from Subspace Emissary, Brawl's Adventure mode, basically got recycled for use in this mode, except you fight actual video game enemies this time. Smash Run was inspired by the City Trial mode from Kirby Air Ride, where it had the same basic principles of buffing your stats, you just did it in the context of a racing game. Smash 3DS also has Street Smash, a mode linked to the 3DS Street Pass mode. People met using Street Pass get represented by these little tokens, and the goal is to knock them all off the table to get rewards. You can still experience this mode in practice, but you'd be hard-pressed to match with any actual opponents because no one is using Street Pass anymore. Over on the Wii U, we have Smash Tour. In this mode, you play as a Mii in a board game where you collect stat boosts, items, and fighters. You can run into other players on the board, and if that happens, you end up fighting them, where fighters can be gained or lost depending on the performance in the match. After collecting your fighters and stat boosts, a final battle takes place, similar to Smash Run, where all sorts of different themes can happen. And I don't really think I need to say it, but this mode is just boring. Like they kinda just made worse Mario Party, which at that point, just go play Mario Party. I guess I can see booting this up occasionally, but I don't know, I just feel like if you're already playing with friends, you can come up with your own wacky rules as a group better than a pre-made mode can. Booby! Smash Wii U also has Special Orders, which comes in 2 flavors, Master and Crazy. In Master Orders, you ante up some gold in order to compete in a Smash match of varying rules and difficulty in an attempt to win the rewards listed on the ticket. In Crazy Orders, you try to complete as many orders in a row while carrying over your damage from each previous round. You also have a timer, so even if you can make it far, you're still limited by the time. The goal of this mode is to complete as many turns as possible before taking on Crazy Hand at the end, with more turns resulting in higher HP for Crazy Hand. These modes are fine, I guess, like they're kinda cool, but it's not something I'm going to invest a ton of time into either. The online got a pretty sizable rework as well. Aside from playing with friends, the random matches are now split into two modes, for fun and for glory. So first let's take a look at your average for fun match. For Fun mode puts you in a 2-minute long 4-player free-for-all or a doubles match on nearly any stage with items on. But because 3 to 4 people were involved, and with the poor quality of Nintendo Online in general, these matches were always so laggy that you could genuinely barely play sometimes. For Glory is a more serious mode, where you can play doubles, free-for-alls, or 1v1s without items only on Final Destination. I think Sakurai took this meme a little too seriously. However, exclusively playing on Final Destination would get boring visually really quickly. So they also added a brand new feature to the stages, Omega Forms. Every stage now has a Final Destination variant with no hazards or platforms. This way you can play on every stage and enjoy all of the music and visuals that comes with Smash while still playing in a more serious format. This feature was so neat. While the competitive scene absolutely plays on more than just Final Destination, it was cool to not only have some recognition, but get a whole dedicated game mode to play on. Both of these games received regular online updates, which is the first time in the series that this has happened. These updates would encompass a lot, fixing glitches, balancing characters, adding some additional features, and even expanding the number of stages that were available in 8-player Smash. And many of these updates coincided with downloadable fighters. During a Nintendo Direct in April 2015, Mewtwo was officially shown off in-game for the first time. You could call this his reveal trailer, despite technically being revealed months prior. But if you purchase both versions of the game, you could receive Mewtwo for free, and then 2 weeks later, anyone could buy him. This Nintendo Direct also revealed the next DLC fighter, the Brawl veteran Lucas. It was also revealed that Mii fighters would be receiving DLC costumes. While some of these were generic outfits, many represented characters from series in Smash. This was sort of a compromise for characters that wouldn't become full fighters. They'll never be on the roster, but here's a little Mii costume instead. And this would end up being a trend for the rest of Smash 4's lifetime. However, there was also a big surprise during this Direct, the Super Smash Bros. Fighter Ballot. This was a form that anyone in the world could fill out to request a character be added to the Smash Bros. Lineup. The results of the ballot and how it influenced the fighter selection were left intentionally vague, which is perfectly understandable because Smash fans will storm the Capitol over video game characters. Interestingly though, this wasn't the first time this sort of thing was done. Back in the N64 days, a poll for a hypothetical Smash 2 was published. However, it was only ever on the Japanese Smash website, and the number of votes published was pitiful. In June 2015, Nintendo held another special Smash Bros. Presentation, revealing even more new content, opening with the third DLC fighter reveal, Roy, returning from Super Smash Bros. Melee. It always felt like, of all the scrap fighters in the series, both Mewtwo and Roy were some of the most missed, so it was great to see them return. You'll notice that the 3 revealed DLC fighters so far were all returning veterans. It sort of felt like Nintendo was trying to test the waters with DLC, since it was all fairly new to them. So including some returning veterans was a decent way to gauge the fan response. But I guess they were ready, because this presentation also revealed the first fully original DLC fighter for Smash, Ryu from Street Fighter. This was just a no-brainer. Ryu is kinda the crossover guy. He appears in as many games as a guest as he does in his own home series, so it was almost inevitable that he would appear in Super Smash Bros. Eventually. He's also the first character in Smash that comes from a traditional fighting game, which is an interesting full circle moment considering Smash was designed to be the antithesis to these traditional fighting games. I won't dive too much into the Mii Fighter releases unless they're notable, but I think it's also pretty cool that along with the fighting game character, we got Mii costumes from fighting game series as well, namely Sega's Virtua Fighter and Bandai Namco's Tekken. I just kinda like when stuff lines up like that. These character reveals were bombshells, or at least they would have been if the game hadn't been data mined. Yeah, all of this was found in the game's files, and someone even managed to plop Ryu's moveset over another character to see how it worked. But there still was a surprise because they were made available right after that presentation ended. Throughout these updates, new stages would be peppered in as well. The biggest was the Miiverse stage, which is a really cool concept. Each fighter would receive its own community, and users could post art or messages that they created. These messages could then appear in the background when those fighters were being used. Of course, you would get some awesome art or cheering on the fighters, but you would also get stages from Smash 64 were added, Pirate Ship from Brawl for some reason, a really cool Mario Maker stage, and they also put the Duck Hunt stage on the 3DS unexpectedly. During a Nintendo Direct in November 2015, a huge character was revealed, Cloud Strife. I mean, this is it. This is like the biggest character that they could have gotten. Cloud Final Fantasy. That's the guy. Final Fantasy is such a huge franchise, with so many beloved characters. I guess it was actually a tough decision on which Final Fantasy character they were gonna put in the game. But let's be honest, if there's one Final Fantasy guy that should be in Smash, it's Cloud hands down. And finally, in December 2015, we had the final video presentation for Smash for 3DS and Wii U. And boy, did they have a lot to show us. They open up with a cinematic that reveals Corrin, the avatar from Fire Emblem Fates, is a brand new fighter. Which is not surprising. This is Nintendo's game, so of course they're going to use at least one DLC fighter to advertise something. This Smash reveal is actually the very first time we learned this character's English name. Up till now, we only knew them as their Japanese name, Kamui. And then we get one final fighter announcement, the final character of Smash 4. Yeah, this one was controversial. Bayonetta was certainly a popular enough character, but so many people had their doubts. Standing shoulder to shoulder with other DLC fighters like Ryu and Cloud, Bayonetta just kinda sticks out. When you consider the other characters that had more enthusiasm and these big campaigns online for the fighter ballot, it really kinda makes you scratch your head that they chose Bayonetta. And it also doesn't help that Nintendo clearly had a vested interest in Bayonetta as a franchise, becoming its publisher in order to make it exclusive to Nintendo systems. Interestingly, they made a point of saying that Bayonetta was the #1 pick over in Europe, and was in the top 5 for North America. And among the, quote, realizable characters, she was first worldwide. Nintendo was being very careful with their words here, and many people started to think maybe the ballot was rigged. But let's put a pin in that for now because we'll come back to it. So with all of the content finally in these games, let's talk about them as a whole, because there are many reasons to consider them the weakest in the entire series. The idea of doing 2 versions is incredibly unique, but the problem is that they kind of had to split focus on 2 games instead of 1, which sadly just makes both games kind of feel half-baked. Like if they could have just made the Wii U version, I feel like the experience as a whole would have been a lot more polished. Even the actual gameplay of both versions was held back because of the 3DS version. Sakurai described the tempo of the game as somewhere between Melee and Brawl. Not too fast, not too slow, but kinda in the middle. The problem is that in some areas, the game is even slower than Brawl, particularly in the knockback. In order to make characters flying across the screen readable on the teeny tiny 3DS, they had to slow it way down, which really makes the actual matches suffer on the Wii U version since the gameplay is identical. I will say though, the 3DS version has some amazing stages. Battling through essentially an entire playthrough of Kirby's Dream Land inside of a Game Boy is so cute. I love the Pac-Maze stage with the ghosts and pellets as interactables, and I actually cannot believe it took this long to get a Rainbow Road stage. A lot of Smash for Wii U stages are also pretty cool, but some of them definitely leave a lot to be desired. The first thing you can see is that so many of the new stages are gigantic in order to accommodate for 8-player Smash, but in actuality, these things are just inconvenient to play on. They also were really in love with giant stage bosses in this entry, like the Yellow Devil or Ridley. Just these gigantic enemies that pull attention away from the actual battle between players and just cause a bunch of chaos. It's just really frustrating. And as far as the single-player content goes, I'm just left feeling a tad let down. Honestly, the only mode that I absolutely love is Smash Run, and sadly, that wasn't even something you could play online. It was exclusive to local play, so I didn't even get to play it that much. During all of the pre-release presentations, they really seemed to hype up connectivity between the versions, and all you can really do is toss a custom character from 3DS to Wii U and use the 3DS as a controller. I mean, I didn't really expect more than that, but they just kept hyping it up and saying, we'll reveal more details soon. I thought they had more in store. I think the best word to describe these games is lukewarm. They're still Super Smash Bros. Games, but they just kind of leave you feeling unfulfilled. And that's ironic because these games marked so many milestones in the series' history. The first handheld Smash, the first with downloadable updates and content, the introduction of big CGI reveal trailers. Hell, this game was the launchpad for Amiibo, and it's just so forgettable. It really is a shame. Smash 4's final video presentation took place on December 15th, 2015, with the last bit of content coming out over the following months. So with development wrapping up, surely that means that the team will finally be able to take a break, right?